in between Bible class and starting. And it's because I didn't even set up my PowerPoint. So afterward we'll have 544, and then he can go into 166, and then we'll do the Lord's Supper, and then the contribution prayer could just be our final prayer. Okay. This work. So, get that quick review? Good. All right. So last week we had some delays, and so we have a little bit shorter of a sermon this morning, finishing out the discussion of aging. And the core of it was was verse 8 of Genesis 47. Then Joseph brought in Jacob his father and stood him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How many are the days of the years of your life?" That's code for, how old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The days of the years of my sojourning are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their sojourning." And so we talked about some of that, and we were getting into discussion of pitfalls. Pitfalls that face the aged. Pitfalls facing older people. And one of them is the idea that I'm old and therefore I'm wise. And that is, the idea that age itself inherently brings wisdom. And I would say that, to a small degree, that's true in no matter what. But just the basic idea here, I'm old and therefore I'm wise, is something that would be a potential point of pride. Now that could be a problem. And also just a potential lie that gets told. We have an example from the book of Job. If you've made a study of the book of Job, then you know that Job lost everything, right? That Job was an amazing person, an amazing man of God. And Satan says to God, the only reason he's faithful to you is because you have blessed him beyond his wildest imagination. But if you take away all those blessings, he'll curse you to your face. And God says, okay, it's on. You can't kill him, but I will allow you to hurt him. And he loses everything, right? And Job still remains, a great man all the way through the book, despite the fact that he's not perfect, as we see, and that he, in a way, talks back to God in an inappropriate way. But especially rebuked are Job's three friends whose best move is to sit and keep their mouths shut for a week. And that's it. Honestly, I really believe you got to be careful with when you look at Job, because just because something is inspired, just because it's inspired doesn't mean it's true. Here's what I mean by that. You've got three friends of Job, and the Spirit has relayed related to us the things that they said, well, the Spirit also relayed to us the fact that they get rebuked at the end. Just because it comes out of one of their mouths, it means it truly came out of their mouths, but it doesn't mean that that's going to inform our understanding of the reality of spiritual things. Hopefully that makes some sense. Judas was, we have we have an account that inspires us about, the inspired account of Judas, but Judas was wrong, right? Lots of people have been wrong. Elihu is a young man, and he is the only one who doesn't get the rebuke. He doesn't get any rebuke at all. And we are left to infer, because Job and the three friends are all rebuked, that God had nothing to rebuke this young man for. Let's read it. Job 32. So these three men ceased to answer Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. Then Elihu, the son of Barachel, the Buzite of the family of Ram, burned with anger. He burned with anger at Job because he justified himself rather than God. He burned with anger also at Job's three friends because they had found no answer, although they had declared Job to be in the wrong. Now Elihu had waited to speak to Job because they were older than he. Is that a good move? Absolutely. 100%. All of you, all of us. I know, I'm still young to some people. All right. But I don't feel young at all. And so, hey, all you young people, take a page out of Elihu's book and reserve, hold your tongue. Hold your tongue in a respectful way when you've got some older people that are speaking, and really listen to them first. Now Elihu had waited to speak to Job because they were older than he, and when Elihu saw that there was no answer in the mouth, did they really give no answer? No. They gave 27 chapters of answer. Something like that. They gave a lot of answer. And here, the man who doesn't get rebuked is inspired in his thought. We have a record of his thought. And he said, basically, you said nothing. So no, I'm not going to pop into the middle of Job like Job 17 and go, yeah, it says that. Therefore, I'm going to guide my whole life on that. And when Elihu saw that there was no answer in the mouth of these three men, he burned with anger. And Elihu, the son of Barachel the Buzite, answered and said, I am young in years, and you are aged. Therefore I was timid and afraid to declare my opinion to you. I said, let days speak. In other words, I said to myself, let days speak, and many years teach wisdom. But it is the Spirit in man, the breath of the Almighty, that makes him understand. Okay. And I would insert some words here. All right. It is not the old who are wise, he says. I would say, it's not necessarily. I think he's saying, it's not necessarily the old who are wise, nor the aged who understand what is right. Therefore I say, listen to me. Let me also declare my opinion. And then he has a few chapters, and my opinion, and it's not, in my opinion, that those are some of the best chapters and the most valid chapters in the book of Job, besides obviously the ones where God himself is speaking. Right? Another problem that can happen, and we're really actually looking at the opposite of this, because we're looking at a good example of self-confidence and faith in God. But we've seen it. We've seen people struggle as they age with self-confidence and, more importantly, faith in God. If you have no faith in God, then what's your self-confidence worth? How meaningful is your self-confidence if God's taken out of the picture? Caleb at 85, this is from the book of Joshua. Caleb at the age of 85, listen to this man speak. Joshua 14, beginning in verse 6. And I realize now that that's a little small. And I'm sorry. It says, then the people of Judah, this is Joshua 14, 6. Then the people of Judah came to Joshua at Gilgal. And Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, you know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, in Kadesh Barnea concerning you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought him word again as it was in my heart. But my brothers who went up with me made the heart of the people melt. Yet I wholly followed the Lord my God. And Moses swore on that day, surely the land on which your foot has trodden shall be an inheritance for you and your children forever, because you have wholly followed the Lord my God. And now behold, the Lord has kept me alive, just as he said, these 45 years since the time that the Lord spoke this word to Moses, while Israel walked in the wilderness. And now behold, I am this day 85 years old. I am still as strong today as I was in the day that Moses sent me. My strength now is as my strength was then, for war and for going and coming. So now give me this hill country of which the Lord spoke on that day. For you heard on that day how the Anakim were there with great fortified cities. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall drive them out just as the Lord said. Confident in God, confident in himself. And so that's a positive example of something that we know affects in a negative way a lot of people as they get old. Here's a slightly different spin with the I'm old and therefore I'm wise. I'm old and that's the most important factor in your honoring me. I'll repeat that. I'm old and that's the most important factor in your honoring me. And before we actually address this, the fact is the old should be honored. The elderly should be honored. We've plenty of evidence of that. We could spend a whole sermon on that, right? In 1 Timothy 5 and 1 and 2, it says, "Do not rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers." From young to old, speak to them differently. Speak to them differently. Even if from old to young, you get patronizing and you get demeaning, that doesn't matter. That's on them. From young to old, speak to them as you would a father or a mother. Leviticus 19, I quoted it, but we didn't go there last week. Leviticus 19 and 32, built into the law of Moses for the Jews, codified into that law was respect for the elderly. And so the principle was there, and the principle remains. You shall stand up before the gray head and honor the face of an old man, and you shall fear your God. I'm the Lord. Does that make you wonder what the connection is? That he goes, and you shall fear your God, I'm the Lord. Kind of begs you to join them up and figure out, okay, what's the connection there? But Methuselah, how old did he live? How long did he live? Come on, anybody. 969, right? What else do we know about him? Nothing. We know nothing about Methuselah except that he had a serious case of TMB. Too many birthdays. I bet when he was like 960, he's like, okay, I'm done. Right? Starting to feel like a vampire now. This whole vampire thing, it wasn't as great as I thought. Methuselah had a lot. I'm just kidding. I don't think he was a vampire. Just being silly. He had a lot of birthdays, and that seems to be about it. Right? God did not choose to reveal anything about him besides that he was the oldest man who ever lived. And I have a poem that is pretty neat. It's called We Live in Deeds, Not Years, by Philip James Bailey. We live in deeds, not years. And I really wish I could read this about 6 times for you, but you'd probably get annoyed. But it's one that you kind of need to read a couple times before you really get it. We live in deeds, not years. In thoughts, not breaths. In feelings, not figures on a dial. We should count time by heartthrobs. He most lives who thinks most, feels the noblest, acts the best. And he whose heart beats quickest lives the longest, lives in 1 hour more than in years do some whose fat blood sleeps as it slips along their veins. Life's but a means to an end. That end, beginning, mean, and end to all things, God. The dead have all the glory of the world. And mean, kind of like the middle. It's not a mathematical middle, that's the median. But in case you were wondering about mean, it's the average. That end, the beginning of one's life, the basic middle of one's life, and the end of all things. Or that God is the beginning and the middle and the end to all things. And the dead have all the glory of the world. The faithful dead, right? You know, suffering changes form as we move through life. There are ways that you suffered as a 20-year-old that you probably won't suffer as a 70-year-old. Changes forms. And it does kind of seem like it snowballs. It does kind of seem like suffering proliferates as we age because the physical is hard to get around. Sometimes it's literally like you have trouble getting around. But the physical problems that we have are sometimes hard to see past. All you can think about, right, when you're hurting sometimes is that you're hurting. We have great promises. We have great promises. I always think of Romans 8. Always think of Romans 8. Beginning in verse 18. Romans 8, beginning in verse 18. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now, right? Childbirth is representing all of the physical pain, and maybe beyond, it represents all the suffering. The pain of childbirth represents all human suffering here. Sickness, the death, everything. And not only the creation, but we ourselves. In other words, it's better for the Christian. Hands down, the best life that any human could live is the life of a Christian. But it's still trouble. It still has its suffering. It still hurts. Not only the creation in general, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. Age has its blessings. Age has its curses. Age has its dangers. And brighter that hope grows each day when we think of the promises that God has made. For momentary, light affliction is creating for us an eternal weight of glory, far beyond all comparison. Because we look not at the things which are seen, because the things that are seen are temporary, but we look at the things that are not seen, that is the invisible things, because the things that are invisible are permanent. That's pretty neat. We welcome you to respond in any way that you need to the gospel. Maybe you are hurting physically or spiritually, and you're needing help. You are welcome to let us know as we stand and sing. Number 544. There's a call coming on the restless waves. Send the light, send the light. There are souls to rescue, there are souls to save. Send the light, send the light, send the light. Send the light. 166. 166. Why did my Savior come to earth and to the humble go? Why did He choose a lowly birth? Because He loved me so. He loved me so. He loved me so. He gave His precious life for me, because He loved me so. Why did He drink the bitter cup of sorrow, pain, and woe? Why on the cross He lifted up? Because He loved me so. He loved me so. He loved me so. He gave His precious life for me, because He loved me so. Till Jesus comes, I'll sing His praise, and to the glory go, and live with Him through endless days, because He loved me so. He loved me so. He loved me so. He gave His precious life for me, because He loved me so. So to prepare our minds also for the Lord's Supper is